3,000 years before Genesis was written down, a king in Assyria did something that every king in the ancient world understood. He carved a statue, not a small one, a life-sized image cut from stone, bearing his face, his crown, his authority. And then he sent soldiers to carry it to the farthest edge of his empire, to the borderland where his army had just won, where the people were still sorting through what remained of their homes. And they planted that statue in the ground. No speech was needed, no decree. Every person who walked past that stone face understood the message instantly. The king rules here. That stone statue had a name. In the ancient Semitic languages, the word was tselem, image. And now you need to hold that image, that stone king on the border. Because when you get to the first chapter of Genesis, the first chapter of the entire Bible, and you read those words that have been read at bedsides and in cathedrals and in prison cells for thousands of years, you're going to hear that word again. Let us make mankind in our tselem, in our image. Stay with me. There is a coin in this story. You won't see it until near the end. But when you do, when the pieces lock into place, everything about what it means to be human is going to shift. This is not a lesson about theology. This is not a history lecture. This is not a Bible study for people who already know all the answers. This is a question, 4 words long, that will change the way you look at every face you pass on the street, every person you sit across from at a table, every human being you have ever dismissed or overlooked or written off. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? The Church has wrestled with this for 2,000 years. Philosophers have argued about it. Dictators have tried to erase it. Martyrs have died for it. And right now, in this moment, it is one of the most urgent questions any of us can ask. Because the answer doesn't just tell you something about God. It tells you something about you. It tells you something about the person sitting next to you. And once you understand what the word actually means, not the Sunday school version, not the bumper sticker version, but the full, ancient, world-shattering weight of it, you will never look at another human being quite the same way again. Let's go back to that Assyrian king and his stone statue. Because the ancient world ran on images. Every empire you can name, Babylon, Egypt, Assyria, Persia, they all did some version of this. You conquered a territory, you planted your image, and the image declared ownership. You didn't need to be present. The statue was present for you. It bore your likeness. It extended your rule into a place you couldn't physically stand. Scholars call this the royal representative function of ancient images. The image doesn't just resemble the king. The image acts as the king in that location. Now read Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, with that in your mind. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." Do you see it? The same word, tselem, image, and immediately, in the very same breath, God says, "so that they may rule." This is not a coincidence. The author of Genesis knew exactly what he was doing. In a world where only kings were carved in stone, in a world where only pharaohs were called Son of God, in a world where the image was always only for the powerful. Genesis says, every human being is the image. Not just kings, not just priests, not just men. Verse 27 makes it explicit. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Male and female, both together, in the image. Think about what this would have sounded like to a woman in the ancient Near East. Think about what it would have sounded like to a slave, to a foreigner, to a prisoner of war being marched through a conquered city past the stone face of the victorious king. You are the image, not him, you. The theologians use two Hebrew words to unpack this. The first is tselem, the image, the representative, the one who bears authority on behalf of the king. The second word appears in the same verse, demuth, likeness. It's a softer word, where tselem is about function, what you do. Demuth is about resemblance, what you reflect. You are not God. You are like God. You bear his likeness. You represent his character. In every territory you stand in, you are his tselem. You are the image planted at the border of the earth. Now here's where the story gets harder. Because the image doesn't stay pristine. It doesn't remain unbroken. And Genesis itself shows you what happens when the image bearers turn away from the one whose image they bear. By Genesis chapter 9, the flood has come and gone. The world has been undone and remade. And God speaks to Noah, a man who has watched everything he knew disappear underwater, and says this, "Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made mankind." Read that sentence slowly, because it is doing something extraordinary. God is not just making a law about murder. He is grounding justice itself in the Imago Dei. He is saying, the reason you cannot casually destroy a human life, the reason it is not just illegal, but wrong at the deepest level of the universe, is because every human being carries something sacred, something that belongs to God. To harm a person is not just to harm a person, it is to deface the image of the Creator. This is not an abstract principle. It has teeth. It has weight. When you understand this, every act of cruelty, every dismissal, every dehumanization, every time a human being is treated as less than fully human, becomes an act against God Himself.
My family is hungry. We only ask for a little more time.
Here's what most people miss.
No time for beggars.
The Imago Dei is not a compliment God gives to people He likes. It is a dignity He stamps into every person at the moment of their existence. You don't earn it. You can't lose it. You can try to suppress it, in yourself or in others, but you cannot remove it. It is there the way the image of a king is carved into stone. It takes something violent to get it out. Now watch what the poet sees. David is outside at night. He's probably young still. A shepherd's instinct for open sky, for counting stars, for sitting in silence while the animals sleep. He looks up, and what he sees breaks something open in him. He writes, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, human beings that you care for them?" This is not a triumphant psalm. This is a man genuinely confused, genuinely small. The universe is too large and he is too small, and the question he is asking is the most human question there is. Why does any of this matter? Why do I matter? And then he remembers. and the remembering changes everything. You have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. That word, glory, is the Hebrew kabod. It means weight, substance, something that cannot be ignored, something that takes up space in a room when it walks in. God has given humans kabod, not as a reward, not as something to achieve, as a crown, something placed, something given, something that rests on you whether or not you feel it. You, sitting wherever you are right now, carrying whatever you are carrying, you wear a crown of kabod. And David saw it in the stars. We are about halfway through. And I want to pause here for just a moment. Because if this is the first time you've heard Imago Dei unpacked this way, if you've always thought of it as a vague religious phrase, and not as the most radical claim about human dignity ever made, then what's coming in the second half is going to hit even harder. We are going to meet a man writing theology while a dictatorship rose around him. We are going to hear what happens when a society officially decides that certain people don't carry the image. And we are going to return to that coin I mentioned at the beginning. If this kind of deep Bible content is what you're looking for, subscribe. There's a new video every week. And if you've already subscribed, thank you. Leave a comment below. Had you heard the word Imago Dei before today? By the 2nd century, the church was in a fight. Not with Rome, though that was happening too. The fight, I mean, was internal. A group of teachers had begun spreading an idea that seemed to them spiritually advanced, enlightened. The idea was this: the physical world is corrupt, matter is evil, the body is a prison, and the real self, the true self, is a pure spiritual spark trapped inside flesh it never wanted. These teachers were called Gnostics, and they had followers everywhere. A bishop in Lyon named Irenaeus watched this teaching spread, and he understood what it would cost. If the body is evil, then the physical creation of God is evil. If matter is corrupt, then the incarnation, God taking on flesh, is impossible. And if flesh is bad, then the image of God cannot be located in the whole human person. It must be something that escapes the body, something purely spiritual. Irenaeus pushed back, slowly, carefully, and in writing that has survived nearly 2,000 years. He argued that the tselem, the image, was located in human reason and freedom, the capacity to think, to choose, to relate to God. But the demuth, the likeness, was the moral and spiritual potential to grow toward God, to become more and more like Him through the work of grace. And crucially, both the image and the likeness belonged to the whole person, body and soul together. Not a soul trapped in a body, a person, a complete physical, breathing, embodied person. Irenaeus wrote, "The glory of God is a human being, fully alive. Not a soul fully released. A human being, fully alive." Pay attention to this. Because what Irenaeus was defending was not just a point of theology. He was defending the dignity of the body, the dignity of the physical, the insistence that when you look at a person, any person with all their limitations and their flesh and their mortality, you're looking at something God intended. 2 centuries later, a man sat in his study in North Africa and stared at the question from a different angle. Augustine of Hippo had spent the first 30 years of his life running from God. He had tried philosophy, He had tried Manichaeism, another version of the idea that matter was evil and spirit was pure. He had tried pleasure. He had tried ambition, and none of it worked. Then he converted. And he spent the rest of his life, 40 years, thinking harder about the nature of God and the nature of the human person than almost anyone in history. Augustine found the image of God in the structure of the human mind itself. He noticed something. The mind has three fundamental capacities: memory, understanding, will. You can remember the past. You can comprehend the present. You can choose the future. Three distinct functions, and yet one mind, indivisible. This, Augustine said, is a trace, an echo of the Trinity. Three persons, one God. Three faculties, one mind. The image is not just in what we do or who we represent. It is embedded in the very architecture of how we think. You are made with a mind that mirrors the structure of God's own being. That is either the most humbling thing you've ever heard, or the most exhilarating. Possibly both. Now we have to go somewhere harder. The year is 1933. A young German theologian, 37 years old, brilliant, the son of a distinguished psychiatric professor, sits down to write a series of seminary lectures on the first chapters of Genesis. His name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And outside the windows of the seminary where he is writing, something is happening. A man named Adolf Hitler has just been appointed Chancellor of Germany. The Nuremberg Laws are beginning to take shape, a system of legislation designed to strip Jewish people of their citizenship, their rights, their legal personhood, to place them, in the eyes of the state, outside the category of full human beings. Bonhoeffer writes, "The image of God is not a quality that a human being has. It is a relationship in which the human being stands." He is writing theology, but he is also writing resistance. Because what the Third Reich was doing, what every system of dehumanization does, is deny the image. It draws a line around a group of human beings and says, the Imago Dei does not apply here. These ones don't carry it. These ones can be treated as less. And Bonhoeffer, who would eventually be arrested, imprisoned, and executed for his resistance to Hitler, understood that this was not just a political crime. It was a theological one. The deepest kind of blasphemy, to take a bearer of God's image and declare that the image isn't there. He also understood something else, something that would cost him everything. If the image is a relationship, not a possession, not a quality, but a living connection between the Creator and the creature, then it cannot be stripped away by law. It cannot be annulled by a government decree. It cannot be removed by a bullet. The image is there because God put it there. And only God can unmake what God made. Now we return to the coin. The year is approximately AD 30. Jesus is in the temple courts in Jerusalem. The Pharisees and the Herodians, two groups who agree on almost nothing, have come together because they agree on one thing. They want to trap him. They bring him a coin, a denarius, the standard Roman coin used to pay taxes to Caesar. And they ask him a question designed to destroy him, no matter how he answers. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? If he says yes, he sides with Rome and loses the crowd. If he says no, he's a revolutionary, and they hand him to the soldiers. Jesus takes the coin. He holds it up, and he asks, "Whose image, whose icon is this? Whose inscription?" They say, Caesar's. And he says, "Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and render to God what is God's."
Go and learn what this means.
Every scholar who has read that passage has focused on the first sentence, the question of taxes, the question of church and state. Those are real questions worth asking. But here's the part nobody tells you. The denarius bears Caesar's icon, his image. And in the ancient world, that means the coin belongs to Caesar. The image declares ownership. Give it back to him. It's his. But Jesus has just spent 3 years touching lepers no one else would touch. Speaking to Samaritans no one else would acknowledge. Inviting children into his arms when his own disciples tried to send them away. And now he holds up a coin stamped with a man's face and says, "Give it to the man." The unspoken question, the one hanging in the air like smoke, is what bears God's icon? You do. Render to God what is God's. You are the tselem. You are the icon. You are the image. And that means you belong, not to Caesar, not to any government, not to any ideology, not to anyone's definition of your value or your worth or your usefulness. You belong to God. 12 years after the temple, and 500 miles away, a man named Paul writes a letter to a church in the city of Colossae. He has been thinking about Jesus. He has been thinking about what it means that God took on human flesh, that the Creator put on the image He had created. And he writes a sentence that has stopped theologians in their tracks for 2,000 years. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. Icon tu theo aoratu, the image of the invisible God. If you want to know what Imago Dei looks like, fully realized, undistorted, unbroken, Paul says, look at Jesus. He is the complete picture, the fullest expression of what it means to bear the image of God. Compassionate, just, present with the suffering, furious at hypocrisy, tender with the broken, unyielding in truth. And then Paul says something that should stop you cold. He says, writing to ordinary people in an ordinary city, many of them slaves and tradespeople, and women with no legal standing. He says, we are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory. Not, you were the image. Not, you lost the image. Being transformed. Present tense. Active. Ongoing. The image is not gone. It is being restored. Renewed. Brought back to full clarity, the way a painting smudged and covered in centuries of dust can be restored, painstakingly, by hands that know what the original looked like. A man stood on a bridge in Selma, Alabama in March of 1965. 600 people had gathered to march. They were met by state troopers with clubs and tear gas. And before the first baton fell, before the cameras began broadcasting what would become one of the defining images of the 20th century, Martin Luther King Jr. had been preaching from the same text for years. Imago Dei, not as theology, as fuel. He argued consistently, publicly, in sermons and in jail cells and in front of presidents, that the civil rights movement was not primarily a political argument. It was a theological one. You cannot treat human beings as less than human because human beings are not less than human. They carry an image that no law and no custom and no tradition of oppression can remove. The marchers crossed the bridge. They got beaten. They came back. And eventually, the law changed. Because when people understand, truly understand, what the image means. They stop accepting arrangements that deny it. So, 3 things to carry with you. First, the Imago Dei is not about what you look like. It has nothing to do with your appearance, your ability, your productivity, or your usefulness to anyone. It is about what you are, a royal representative, placed by God in a specific part of His creation, bearing His character into the world. That is not a metaphor. That is your function. Second, every human being you will ever meet carries this image. Not just the ones you like. Not just the ones who believe what you believe. Not just the ones who have earned your respect or your sympathy. The difficult ones, the broken ones, the ones who have wronged you, the ones who seem furthest from God. Every single one of them carries the image of the Creator. And that changes how you treat them, not as a rule, but as a recognition. You're not just being polite. You're acknowledging something real. Third, and this is the one I want you to take home. You're not an accident. You're not a mistake. You're not the sum of your worst moments, or the product of someone else's opinion of you, or a number in a system, or a problem to be managed. You are the image of the living God, placed here, on purpose, for a purpose. And the God who stamped that image into you, the same God who breathed life into Adam, who crowned David with Kabod, who took on flesh in Galilee, who is still, right now, working to restore that image to its full clarity in you. That God has never for one moment forgotten whose image you bear. Which part of Imago Dei hit you hardest today? Tell me in the comments. I read every one,